I was walking through the halls of a Minnesota rink when along came a Wild fan who started talking smack to me. He said, I bet you never liked the Blues until they won a cup. And so I calmly turned to him and said, hey man, listen up. I admit it's pretty great to win Lord Stanley's prize, but listen, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup in here, 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues. I know Oshie, Backus, Berglund, J-Bo, Perron, Petro, Steiner, Allen, Tarasenko, Gunnarsson, Bennington, Edmund, Shen, Stastny, Elliott, Fabry, Shattenkirk, O'Reilly, Schwartz, Reeves, Yarrow, Barber, Sheparenko, Dunn, Langenbrunner, Portuzo, Koliakovo. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup in year 52, man. So give me a We Went Blues.
And now, the starting lineup for your Bluenotes podcast. Tom Franklin and the man called Wags.
And thank you, Tom Calhoun. And hello and welcome to Bluenotes, located on the best city on the Mississippi, the best in the Midwest. We've got that Stanley Cup power, too sweet to be sour. And if you're still clueless, we are talking about St. Louis. This is your home for St. Louis Blues coverage on the Hockey Podcast Network. Welcome to all our viewers and listeners on the internet, whether you're listening to us on the podcast or on YouTube or Facebook tonight. Last word on hockey. Welcome you guys. Guy the White Blues fans universe, wherever you are, thank you for being right here, right now. I'm Tom Franklin, joined as always by my executive officer, Wags. Wags, hockey is back!
I know, I just cannot believe it. I'm so excited. You know, we've got a Blues scrimmage tonight. If you're listening to us and watching us on Sunday, there's a scrimmage going to get ready to drop here around 7 o'clock. But Wednesday, yes, it's late, but my God, we have hockey again.
Yes, indeed. And welcome to Aaron Wallace on Facebook chiming in, saying hello to everyone. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, drop us a comment and we will pop you on here just like we did Mr. Aaron Wallace there. So, of course, we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Bluenotes Pod. You can follow us at all those pages for the latest updates. Also on YouTube as well. Make sure you ring the bell on YouTube so you know that when we are live next. And Wags, of course, you know, if you can tell our listeners to give us a review. I think I just told you already to do that. So
yes, give us a review, especially wherever you're getting your podcast, especially on Apple iTunes, because the more reviews we get, the better reviews you get. More Blues fans are going to be able to hear the coverage of Bluenotes and what we think about the Blues. And you know, it's always nice to get some fresh voices out there into the sports podcasting and broadcasting world.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a special guest. We're actually going to flip the usual script from how we do our Sunday episodes when we have guests. So usually we'll ramble for a few minutes and then we'll have Guy on for the Aloha Commentary and then we'll bring our guest on. We're flipping it around a little bit. Just why not? Because it's 2021, new year, new us. And we have a special guest. It is Fansided writer and It Avs It Is podcast host Griffin Youngs will lead things off for us this season. Of course, we had the Quack Report on Thursday. I want to thank Carter and Nate for being on. That's season 2, episode 10. If you want to check that out and find out a little bit more about the Blues' new division rivals this year. And of course, we have another Aloha commentary from Guy the YA Blues fan. He is going to help us pick who is going to win the Central Division this week. We did the West Division last week, and now we are picking the Central Division because it's the division that pushed us off to the West. I guess because we didn't want to hurt Dallas's feelings or something, so we, get bit on that one. But regardless, actually, you know what? Dallas is getting bit themselves, by the COVID bugs. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Maybe another reason why maybe it's not so bad to be out West. And then, of course, we'll pick the Central Division standings ourselves, talk about some bibs and bobs from around the league. In our Notes That Are Blues segment, there's a fair bit of news going on, as you can imagine, because hockey is back in, by the time you listen to this on Monday, 2 days. 2 days, Wags. And I in our graphic, I made sure to include John Denver in it because, of course, we're talking about, the Rocky Mountains today. And I got sad, though, right when I put him there, because I was reminded that we have not heard Blues fans belting out Country Roads for 10 months now. And it's been way too long.
Yeah, and I was one of those people that wasn't a fan of it early on, but it's definitely grown on me, especially being a season ticket holder and being there more frequently. I gotta think that Fox Sports Midwest, the St. Louis Blues, somebody is going to get something together where the fans are going to be able to do something like that and be able to play that somewhere, somehow, so that we can still get that experience and do that in our own homes. And granted, it's going to be harder and harder to watch the Blues this year because we're not sure how all that's going to play out. But I'm sure they're going to find some way to make that happen. Last year, with everything going down and being up in Edmonton, you couldn't really do things at the arena. But now we might be able to do some of these things that we're used to doing. It's just going to be separate, but still something that they might be able to plan. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and Country Roads, I first thought it was kind of weird when Blues fans started singing that just because it's talking about the mountains in West Virginia, which are, last I checked, nowhere near St. Louis. But we do have plenty of country roads, around the St. Louis area, so I guess it kind of fits there. And I have strong memories of the morning after the Blues won the Stanley Cup. So this would have been June 13th, 2019. I had just pulled an all-nighter. I literally woke up, went to Enterprise Center to watch the Blues and Bruins Game 7 from the monitor. My news director wanted me to get some fan audio from after the game. So watched the game from the KMOX booth, of course, because, when in Rome. And, I all night long, it was just Blues fever after winning the Cup. And then leaving work that morning, downtown St. Louis, I stopped at an intersection. It was Olive and 14th. And I had my window down because it was a nice day. And there was another car in our little four-way that was just blaring Country Roads. And underneath the music, you can actually hear the driver singing Country Roads, as it's going on. And I just okay. So I kept going down 14th, got to 14th and Clark, which is where Enterprise Center is. Windows still rolled down. Press play on Country Roads. I started singing it, and I swear I heard the guy behind me singing it. It's just a contagious song,
It is. Between that and Gloria, that was the soundtrack of that summer. I mean, it was those two songs, and what that song by Lit too. I mean, those are the three.
Oh yeah.
Those are the three that Blues fans know by heart and will sing it anytime they hear the first couple of notes. No doubt.
Yes. Exactly right. We're one of the, it's I wish singing among fans like that was more popular like it is in like European countries, like big reason I'm a Liverpool fan is because I watched YouTube videos of 50,000 plus, crazy English singing You'll Never Walk Alone, kind of a, throwaway song from the 60s. And I'm like, you know what? This is pretty cool.
Yeah,
this is pretty cool.
Try not to get sick over here. You said you're a Liverpool fan. I know that, but every time you say it, it still makes me want to puke.
I see your Man U jersey kind of creeping out there from the corner.
I mean, I'm representing at least.
Anyway, hey, we all can't be perfect. It's fine. You dated a Blackhawks fan. I didn't. It's fine. It's fine. I get it. All right. Griffin Young, Griffin Youngs. He's actually waiting for us as we speak. And a reason we're talking to him today, as opposed to say Thursday, is because there is no godly way we'll be able to finish a fresh podcast following Wednesday night's opener in Colorado. The game will end at about 12:30, local time here in St. Louis. I have to be up for work an hour after that. So, and this is not a Stanley Cup final. So we can't do that. Wags, you can't do that because of your employment. I'm sure Griffin's can't do that, being, where he lives. So unfortunately, the Thursday episode will not have any sort of recap from the Wednesday night game. I'm just warning you all in advance. We're human. We need sleep at some point. So, but thankfully this 9:30 game, it's one of the few for the Blues this year. I still give NHL some stick taps for at least helping us out there. So But anyway, without further ado, Fansided writer and Tell It Avs It Is podcast host Griffin Youngs joins us now here on Bluenotes. It is our Bluenotes face-off of the week.
It's the Bluenotes face-off of the week.
And thank you once again, Tom Calhoun, and thank you to the makers of NHL 94 for that beautiful music to introduce us to our guest this week, Griffin Youngs. How's it going, bud?
I'm doing quite well. How are you guys doing tonight?
We're good. This hockey is back. This is not a fever dream. It's real. Hockey is coming back. We have waited so long for this. I can't wait.
I can't wait neither. It's hard to be upset at all when there's, what is it, 2 days now till season opener?
Yeah, exactly. By the time
Feels like it's been a lifetime.
It really does. I mean, we had the playoffs, which was, great for me. I was one of those people. I work, at the total ass crack of dawn. So, by the time I got home, the first round robin games were going, or the first playoff games were going. And it's like hockey all afternoon. It was absolutely awesome. But, the season ended in September. And of course, a lot's happened, in the country and the world. 4 months in 2020 might as well be 4 years. So, exactly. I'm glad we finally got to this point, and we have hockey back here. So, first of all, let's go ahead and get to know you a little bit. Of course, you're one of our new podcasts here on the Hockey Podcast Network. What got you into the NHL and the game of hockey growing up? Now, before you answer that, I understand I have an inside source that tells me you're actually a Capitals fan, first and foremost.
Sounds like I think I might know who that source is, but I can confirm that rumor is in fact true. I do live out here in Maryland in the DMV. If you can see maybe a little bit behind me, that red sign, that is a Caps sign. So
okay.
I did grow up a Caps fan and everything, but I do have a very, very good connection to the Avs. My favorite player growing up for a while was Andre Burakovsky when he was on the Capitals. And then obviously last season he gets moved to Colorado. I already followed the team just because Nathan McKinnon, hard to not follow him. Fair. And then Burakovsky heads over there, got his jersey on now. Full-blown Avs fan now.
I love it.
Yeah, you certainly do. I mean, in the league, with free agency and all that stuff, you're going to have to follow players, no question whatsoever. You also write for Fansided, and how long have you been with them? And do you have any favorite articles that you've written so far?
I've been with Fansided for about 4 years now. 4 years ago, last October, I actually started writing about the UFC back in the early days for a site called Cage Pages, which was just a smaller site on Fansided. But eventually, they brought me up to the main site to cover just about everything. I kept covering the UFC for a while, and I slowly started to creep over to hockey just because I realized I enjoyed writing about it a lot more. And eventually that just became a full-time thing. I'm really blessed to do it. I'm blessed to have this show. I'm blessed to be able to write about the sport I love. I'm blessed to talk about a team I love twice a week. And my favorite article I've written, probably a little over 2 years ago, I did a big season preview for the whole league. I ranked all 31 teams' chances at winning the Stanley Cup that season. This was the season that the Blues won the Stanley Cup. I think I had them 10th that season in terms of chances to win the cup. And I did about a couple thousand words for all 31 teams, and it came out to be a pretty hefty article. It took me about a month to do. That's definitely one I'd be the most proud of.
Feel 10th place that year, Wags. That would be probably, I feel that's right about where people were picking the Blues right before the season, right?
Yeah, no question. And, early on, we would have been like 10th. Yes, we'll take 10th. And then by the end of the year, we're like 10th, really?
We have definitely been rated way lower than that. Trust me.
Oh,
so we salute you already. So let's go ahead and talk about the Blues and the Avs, and, kind of get to, we kind of know the Avs a little bit just because we're both Central Division foes. Now we're moving out to the West. Over the past couple of years, it seems like the Avs and Blues have been kind of building a kind of a competitive rivalry. I wouldn't call it like a real blood rivalry, but it seems like the games are always very high octane, and it just feels like there's always a lot at stake when these two teams play. The Blues have a 9-4 record against the Avs the last 3 seasons, but outside of going 4-0 in 2018-19, the Blues play the Avs. There's a pattern. They play the Avs really well in the first half of the season, and then as we saw last season, just complete shambles, in the second half of the season. I'm really afraid for Jordan Binnington anytime he goes to Denver now, just because the Avs did not treat our starting netminder very well in Denver the last 2 games. So yes, we'll admit it. The Avs scare us a little bit, but how do you and fans like you feel about the Blues?
Well, coming into this season, we definitely have started a bit of a blood feud with Dallas, and probably would label them to be our top rival at the moment. And coming into the season, they were going to be in this West Division with us, and the Blues were going to be out in the Central. Yep. But now that those positions have swapped, I would probably say that of the teams in our division, I would say the Blues are the biggest rival right now. I mean, Minnesota, a couple of years ago, that would have been a pretty big rivalry after that playoff series and everything. But I think you're right. I think something has been boiling with the Avs and the Blues for a little while. Nothing to really call it a major rivalry yet. But once we get through 8 games this season, especially to open the season, then a couple to end the season, and potentially a playoff series if the stars align that way, I think going into next season as well, you could start to see this become a very marketable rivalry for the league. I mean, there was that game a few years ago, game 82, to get into the playoffs that the Avs ended up winning to add to that 9-4 record, 1-1 where it counts. But I think once they do get into that series a little bit, they knock out these first 2 games, meet again just a few weeks later, I think you'll start to see a lot more pushing and shoving coming up.
Yeah, and first of all, thanks for reminding me of that, game 82. I had erased it from my memory for some reason.
You won the cup the next year. I mean, I'm sure that softened it a little bit.
It did, but that was a tough pill to swallow that year. That was another one of those kind of like, hey, this could be our year type of years, and it just didn't happen. Mike Yeo was kind of a train wreck. And then the second thing, speaking of Mike Yeo, you mentioned the Wild. Yeah, the Wild are joining us. I would definitely say I would agree with you in that I think the Blues and Stars have more of a rivalry than the Blues and Wild do. The Wild have always been kind of striving for mediocrity. I will also say I would not be surprised, Wags, if we start seeing a rivalry building between the Blues and the Coyotes, just because the Coyotes seem to have our number for some reason, and I don't know why. And of course, after this season, the Coyotes are jumping to the Central. So, you got to know Corey and Richie are going to want to rub it in our faces, as anytime they can.
Oh, most definitely. And, for talking of rivalries and, moving to the Colorado side of things, I could definitely see Colorado and Vegas really getting into the heat of battle, because they both have superior offensive abilities, and they're both the top 2 teams, I think, in my mind, as cup contenders this year. That could be a really Detroit, Colorado-ish kind of rivalry building this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that. I could also see that happening with the Blues in Vegas, with the Pietrangelo departing and everything.
Trust me, the Vegas Nightly guys, they want that to happen. And so far, I'm not playing along yet, but we might have to cross that bridge at some point, Griffin.
I think we're going to have a lot of Twitter interactions with the Vegas Nightly guys over the course of this season, both of us.
Yes,
I think they're feeling themselves a little bit right now with the team they've got. I mean, and deservedly so, a bit. But with Vegas for the Avalanche, that's definitely going to be probably one of the best matchups to watch in the entire season. I mean, they're going to be putting them out on Lake Tahoe for an outdoor game. I think the NHL feels the same.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, Wags, Vegas, probably the biggest chirpers in the THPN network. They've got to be at this point.
A little bit, maybe.
It helps that they got the biggest chirper of them all, and Mr. Ryan Reeves down there as well.
True.
So, Griffin, before we talk to you, we talked a little bit about how some of the West Coast start times for the Blues were being adjusted, so it's not so late for us here in St. Louis. But being in the Mountain time zone, is it fair to say that the Avs are mostly unaffected by being in that middle time zone, that they're used to these kind of games spanning the 3 zones? So are they going to feel any differences being out in the West?
I wouldn't expect so. I mean, even this 10:30 start time for me out on the East Coast is going to be 8:30 out there. That's not bad at all for the Avs or fans who live out in Colorado. So, and that's going to be one of the later games of the season. Most of these games are going to start around 6 o'clock Mountain Time, 7 o'clock, and a bunch of these games are going to be starting in the afternoon as well. So, I don't think the start times are really going to affect the Avs at all. I mean, they've dealt with this a lot over the years, playing in a bunch of time zones. And I'm sure a lot of these guys are adjusted to it by now.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go ahead and talk about the Avs themselves. They made two notable offseason moves, acquiring Brendan Saad from Chicago for essentially Nikita Zadorov, and there was some minor pieces exchanged. And then the Avs dealt 2 seconds to the Islanders for Devin Taves. First to Saad. I picked him up late in our THPN fantasy draft this weekend. Should I expect a resurgence out of him in Colorado?
Absolutely, you can expect a resurgence out of Brandon Saad in Colorado this season. At worst, Saad is going to be playing on that second line with mainly Nazem Kadri and probably interchangeably with Burakovsky or Gabe Landeskog, just depending on how Bednar feels on a night-by-night basis. But yeah, I mean, Saad, he's been on a lot of winners in the past with those Blackhawks teams, and he's bringing a lot of experience to this Avs team. And I can definitely see him having a strong bounce back. He was pretty solid last year. The only real down season Saad's had was his return to Chicago. You can kind of guess what to expect from him in every other season. And I wouldn't expect him to be that much different here, but definitely strong resurgence with his line mates if he can stick with Kadri. And there could be a chance with injuries or just if Bednar's feeling it to stick him up with McKinnon and Landeskog or Rantanen for that matter. So I think that just that chance alone, that's a very smart pickup to pick him up late in the draft. If you can stick him alongside McKinnon, even if it's just a couple times a year, I can expect he'll be potting a lot of points that night.
And then you pick up, I guess to fill Zadorov's spot, Devin Taves, to add to already a strong defensive stable in Colorado. Arguably probably the best, in my opinion, defensive core in the entire Western Conference for sure. Of course, I'm trying to pick up Taves from another one of our fantasy teams as well. But those who think he's just the other Taves, because everyone knows Jonathan Taves so well, just how good and underrated is Devin Taves, and where do you see him fitting in the Avs pairings?
Getting Devon Taves this offseason is probably one of the best moves Joe Sakic has made outside of the Matt Duchene trade. That is a brilliant pickup. Devon Taves is incredibly underrated. He was excellent in New York and kind of emerged out of nowhere the last few seasons coming up out of the AHL. He fit perfectly in that trot system and everything. He's got a booming shot, and he could potentially slot right up on that top pair with Cale Makar the way things are shaping out in training camp right now. And that could be a lethal duo. That could be a duo that you could see playing for Team Canada in a few years. It's that good. Devon Taves is definitely an upgrade over Nikita Zadorov. No offense to Nikita Zadorov. He was great during his time as an Avalanche. But Devon Taves, paying only 2 seconds for him is an outstanding move, especially if the Avs do as well as we expect them to. Those will be 2 late second-round picks. They're not going to be missing those, especially when you can get Taves for 4 years like we just signed him. It's a brilliant pickup.
Well, you talk a lot about, and all of us talk a lot about Colorado's offense, and now you're talking up the Colorado defense. But in your guys' mind, what is Colorado's biggest strength heading into this season?
Their biggest strength is definitely their top 6 on offense. You put Nathan McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen on a line together, it's already unfair. And even with just that line alone, 2 seasons prior, they were sneaking into the playoffs and giving teams like Nashville and knocking off Calgary 2 years ago as well. They were giving those teams trouble with just basically that line alone. And now they've added all this depth with Saad, Burakovsky, Kadri, everyone underneath them. And now you see it. This team is emerging as a Stanley Cup favorite. They made a good push last season before they ran into a bunch of injuries against Dallas. But that star power in that top 6 is definitely their greatest strength. And that's not to take away from the amazing depth they have in their bottom 6, how much power they've built up on defense by getting Cale Makar and now adding Devon Taves and continuing to get growth from Girard and now potentially getting Bowen Byram up in the NHL this season as well. So definitely that star power with McKinnon, Rantanen, and Landeskog is still their strength.
Yeah, we bigged up the forwards, the top six, the bottom six. We bigged up the defensive core. Is Colorado's biggest weakness their goaltending, or would you even say Colorado has a weakness?
That's probably a good way to put it. I'd say Colorado's weakness is their goaltending by default, if you had to pick one, because I really don't think it's much of a weakness. I like Philip Grubauer as a starting goalie. There's just only the question of if he stays healthy. Right before I got on the show, I saw Jared Bednar's planning to start him for 65% of the games. And if you can get 36 games, which is what that would be, out of Grubauer, and he's fully healthy, you can pretty much expect him to be a 915 goalie, and he, at worst, a 910. He's a very solid starting goalie. He's very underrated, and he's dealt with a lot of injuries during his time in Colorado, and you got to stay healthy, but not a lot of that's in his control. So if he can stay healthy, he'll be a very solid starter for them, and exactly the starter you need in order to carry this team far.
So fair to say that maybe the shortened season might actually help someone like Grubauer?
I would say so. I mean, Grubauer played exactly 36 games last season due to injuries and the pause and everything. So playing 36 games this season for him might just seem like exactly like it was last season. And it's not like they don't have a good backup. Pavel Francouz is a very solid backup as well. He struggled in the playoffs against Dallas, but in the regular season, he had one of the top save percentages in the league. So if he can continue even just along that performance, the Avs are set in net. It might not be as good as their offense or defense, and it might not be one of the better tandems in the league, but it's still up there. It's still above average, and I'd say more than that. I'd say it's very strong.
Now we know the names, McKinnon, Landeskog, Makar. We know these names, but who is the breakout player that Avs fans are going to be expecting a lot out of this year?
The breakout player the Avs can expect a lot more out of is definitely Andre Burakovsky. Andre Burakovsky, when he came over from Washington, he dealt with a lot of injuries. He couldn't really crack the top six in Washington due to inconsistency. Once he came to Colorado and once he got his defined spot in the lineup in that top six, it was over from there. He found his shot. And Burakovsky has one of the best shots in the league. And if he can play up to his full potential this season, I wouldn't be surprised to see him score at a 30-goal pace. His offense is lethal, and his playmaking ability is very underrated as well. And you stick him aside line mates like Kadri and now Brandon Saad, and even last season when they plugged him in with McKinnon and Rantanen or Landeskog during injuries or just when Coach Bednar felt like it, Burakovsky thrived in those roles. And also in the playoffs, you saw Burakovsky came through big time in those elimination games. He's scored in 3 straight Game 7s. So if he can find some consistency this regular season as he starts to get into his prime, I'd expect a lot from him as an Avs fan. He can be that kind of second line player that really can push your team to the next level and take some pressure off of your top line guys.
A Capitals fan saying Burakovsky's the breakout player. Why am I not surprised?
Man, I wonder why I would think that.
I wonder why. Although,
but I also know a thing or two about him, and I know I've seen him in Washington and I've seen him in Colorado. This is a very different player in Colorado than the one I saw in Washington.
Yeah, his resurgence in Colorado was not really being an Avs hater or pro or anti-Avs. It was nice to see, because you definitely saw the talent in Washington. It was just a matter of getting it together, and it seems like Colorado was just the perfect fit for him. Speaking of good fits for fallen stars, if you will, you have one of the Blues' most infamous failures on your roster, and you've had him there for the better part of a decade now. While Erik Johnson I wouldn't say he was bad in St. Louis, and calling him like a failure is really not fair. He didn't live up to being taken first overall over the likes of like a Jonathan Toews and a Nicholas Backstrom who went after him, among others. You get that extra pressure when you're a first overall pick, and he just didn't live up to it. But he does seem to have carved himself a pretty nice role in Colorado as a steady veteran presence in their defense. But there's been some talk I've read about of getting Erik to waive his no movement clause to be exposed to Seattle, or maybe possibly moved out, as you have the likes of Bowen Byram and Connor Timmins coming up. So just based on what you know about the Avs and what you've seen, what do you think Erik Johnson's future is in Colorado?
That's a very tough one to read at the moment. Obviously, like you said, he has that full no trade clause and such. So Erik Johnson, when he's healthy and playing, is a very solid second pair defenseman on this team. He's one of the longest tenured guys on the team. He brings a lot of that veteran experience to the team. But when you have guys like Bowen Byram ready to start to make the NHL, and you've got Connor Timmins chomping at the bit to make the NHL this season, and also Erik Johnson hasn't been in training camp recently. He's still dealing with some, I would call it injuries, but he's been labeled as unfit to play for the moment. We can only take a guess as to what that means right now, but he dealt with injuries during the playoffs. He's dealt with a lot of injuries pretty much almost every year during his time in Colorado. So when you have a chance to bring a guy like Byram and Timmins into the lineup, and all respect due to Johnson, he's been here a long time. And if he's willing to waive that trade clause, I could see him being exposed to Seattle, but I'm not totally convinced that they would take him, just because the Avs would have to also expose some other solid players as well, just from the amount of talent that they have. So I'm not totally convinced that we can pencil him in as a member of the Kraken next season. But as for his future, it's really just a question of how long he really wants to play here. I mean, he has 3 more seasons, including this one. He'll be a UFA after the 2024 season. He's 32 now. He'll be around 35 when the contract expires. So if he wants to stay here, I think he'll stay. But as the salary cap crunch is going to inevitably start to take hold after this season, they might have to start looking elsewhere. I mean, it's a modified no trade clause, not a no trade clause like I just said, but so there are options if you want to move him, and it's not an unmovable contract. It's $6 million for 3 seasons. There is definitely a young team out there that needs defense that will bite on that without having to make you attach something crazy in order to take on the contract. But he'll definitely at least finish out this season, and if the cap crunch gets to be too much and Bowen Byram and Connor Timmins, or just one of them, proves themselves to be NHL ready, then this could be his last season. But I don't think he finishes his contract in Colorado, just if I had to make a prediction right now. If not this season, then maybe the one after that.
So our dreams of an Erik Johnson, Justin Falk pairing in Seattle might be taking a hit.
Maybe.
So I don't think Seattle's jumping at the bit to take Justin Falk's contract right now.
Well, now Ron Francis was his GM in Carolina, and Doug Armstrong Jedi mind tricked Jason Botterill into giving us Ryan O'Reilly, and now they both are in Seattle. One can hope.
Think of that. That's a good point.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll see how that goes. So just in this conversation alone, I think I already know the answer to this question, but we did our picks for the West last week, and it seems to be the consensus out there that Colorado is more than likely the top team out in the West. Is that the same viewpoint that you guys have, or are you kind of like us where we're like, let's not put our team at the top, let's kind of downplay them a little bit and maybe hope they get the first spot?
The expectation in Colorado is that they win this division and they win the Stanley Cup, nothing less. I mean, barring injuries, I'd say this team has no excuse not to win this division. Even with as good as the Blues and Golden Knights are, the way this team is constructed right now, they are built to win right now. So the expectation is the Avs finish first in this division, maybe win a President's Trophy as well, because it doesn't get easier after this season. Like I've mentioned a lot on my show before, you're going to have to re-sign Makar after this season, and Landeskog's going to need a new contract. So the attitude in not just the fan base, but the team, from what I've seen, is that they are the Stanley Cup favorites. They have embraced that, and they are going to charge full steam ahead in trying to not just win the cup, but also win this division.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's really hard to argue against any of that. Really, this team is built for world domination. That is for sure. But how do you see the rest of the West playing out? Like, while the consensus is that the Avs will probably win the West, I mean, Vegas and St. Louis are still in there. Do you see that as being your top 2 contenders, or do you see anyone else in the West really giving you any trouble?
Absolutely. St. Louis and Vegas are the other top 2 contenders. And I'm not saying that the Avs are going to crush those guys and run away with this division in a landslide, because I think this top 3 is the best top 3 in any division. I mean,
amen.
I personally have St. Louis 3rd in the division, which, go on the road to start the playoffs. Doesn't sound like they'd be Stanley Cup favorites, but I easily have them as Stanley Cup favorites. I'd have them winning probably 2 other divisions. I'd have them winning that East division ahead of teams like Boston and Washington. I'd have them winning that Canadian division ahead of teams like Toronto and Edmonton, and I'd only barely put them behind Tampa. And so while the Blues, it's like a little bit of the luck of the draw to be put with Colorado and Vegas when they could have been put out in that Central division, but they're also kind of almost guaranteed a spot ahead of teams like all the California teams, Minnesota and Arizona. So it's you win some, you lose some. Maybe they're not going to be the best team in this division like they would be in some others, but they're also pretty secure in their spot right now.
Well, they also seem to play up to their competition as well. So being in the same division as Colorado, Vegas, they're going to put their best effort in those games, where if they're out in like the East or something like that, they may not play to the best of their ability and may not make a playoff run because they haven't been able to play against the best competition. They're going up against the teams that are going to be there at the end. And I think that's good for the Blues. And I think for teams like Colorado and Vegas too.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I've talked about on my show a lot is that these games against the Blues and the Golden Knights are going to be the way you measure yourself this season, because in this season opening series alone, I went on Guy the Hawaii Blues fans show the other day. He brought up a very good point. If the Blues take 1 against the Avs, that's a win for St. Louis. The Avs need to win both of those games, because you're not going to really play another team considered to be on your level until you play the Blues again in early February. You're going to be playing teams like the Sharks and the Kings and the Wild for probably 8 or 9 games, and you're not going to be able to have another chance to really prove yourself against another team that can be considered on your level until you play the Blues again. And then you're only playing Vegas for the first time at the end of February, and that's going to be 4 straight games, and you've got to put on a showing in those games too. So,
yeah, and exactly. And just from a competitive standpoint, I'm actually, as time has gone on, I'm happier that the Blues are in the West. I think they match up against the Avs and in Vegas very well. We always play, Coyotes are always, a tough out against us. We had actually had a poll, when we were still trying to, NHL was trying to figure out how the divisions were going to sort out on Twitter. And one of the answers was, how can we get annexed into Canada? Just so we can play against that weak division. But then I thought about it, and it's like, the Blues don't have any rivals up in Canada. It would be to me, there would be no sizzle on the steak if, they were in the Canadian division. And if you thought the time zone issues in the West were bad, go to Canada. Good luck with that.
Yeah, that just sounds like a nightmare. And I was a bit disappointed that we couldn't get Dallas in this division as well and send Minnesota back into that Central division. That just would have made for much more entertaining hockey, I suppose, just to get Dallas against St. Louis and Colorado. And they played Vegas in the conference final last season. They've got beef with all those teams. So for entertainment standpoint, I would have much preferred to see the Stars. Yes, they're going to play Tampa and have a Stanley Cup final rematch, but that's going to get old after a little while.
Yeah, that'll definitely get stale. And I when you bring up the Stars, I always bring it up. I still have PTSD over the double overtime Game 7 they had during the Blue Stanley Cup run. Watching Ben Bishop doing what he did, and it's just like every time the Blues play the Stars, it's always a hard matchup between the two. Those two. That's another competitive rivalry that's really kind of started to build up over the last couple of years. And, it's not hate. It's just a very, very competitive game every time those two face off against each other. I'm going to miss them this year. I really am.
I am too, just for the way that they knocked us out last season with that Game 7 overtime, and we're missing both our goalies and everything. We really just wanted to get that pound of flesh back against the Stars over the course of 8 games. And it's a shame that the first time we'd be able to see them this season at all is if we both went to that Final Four and played each other, or we could see each other in the final. But odds are we're not going to see them until probably October hopefully when next season begins. But it's just a shame, because I think there was definitely something boiling over with that. But with matching up with the Blues this season, I think that'll be a very good substitute, because the Avs, they were right on the Blues' heels for just about all of last season. Season paused right when they were just on their heels. They had a very fun game against them in the round robin with that last second winner. And I'd be excited to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, we were doing a live stream of that game, and I wouldn't say fun was a good word for it, Wags.
It was
Not fun.
the worst because it was Kadri, and all credit to Kadri. He's a good player, but he's up in Toronto, he was just so to have him be the guy that did it, and you guys got a couple of guys like that, none more so than the, I guess, shadow owner, and we have such a great history with Mr. Stan Kroenke here in St. Louis. What is the relationship with the Kroenkes and the city or the state of Colorado and the Avs themselves? I mean, obviously Stan is not like the figurehead there. It's more his son. But is there any bad blood, animosity, or just anything wrong with the Kroenkes owning the Avalanche?
There's one thing that I can say for sure is that winning cures all. And at the Avalanche, they have a very, very good team constructed right now. And fans are excited. It's when you start to lose that stuff like that can boil up to the surface. And you saw a bit of that when the Avs were bottoming out a few years ago. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows right now. There's still the stuff with altitude and everything and Comcast. Yeah. And I don't know how much that really has to do with ownership, but it's just something that's unfortunate for Avs fans to be dealing with right now. But in terms of actual relations with the owners, they've made the playoffs the last 3 seasons. They've won 2 playoff rounds in 2 consecutive years, and now they've put together a team that is the consensus Stanley Cup favorite for right now. So a lot of that gets ignored. I mean, like I said, winning cures all. And they haven't won yet, but even just the idea of winning and having a very strong team cures all.
Well, we never got a chance to feel that winning cures all, mentality here when Kroenke owned the Rams, because Kroenke purposely made the Rams bad so he can make them easy to move. I still stand by that statement, not bitter or anything.
It wouldn't surprise me one bit, trust me.
Yeah. I mean, like, he literally took the playbook from the evil owner in Major League. Seriously, he ran that to a T. Only in his case it worked.
No one wanted to take the pieces off of him to see him naked. So
exactly. Who wants to see that? Except his wife, maybe. I don't know. Anywho, on that note, we're gonna give you a chance here, just like we did with the Quack Report, to talk some smack about any other THPN podcasts out there, any budding rivalries. This is your chance to drop a diss track on any other team's podcast here within the network. We gave the Quack Report a chance, as I said, but they kind of took the high road. So we kind of talked about the Vegas Weekly Nightly earlier. Is that going to be your diss track here?
It's hard to say. I mean, I love all the guys at the Hockey Podcast Network. I mean, I've got no beef with any of them personally, and I love the Vegas Nightly guys, but I don't like their team. I do not like the Vegas Golden Knights, and I will come out and say that publicly right now. Love the guys that do the podcast. Do not like that team one bit. I think they're a bunch of whiners. And
I mean, you got to give Marc-Andre Fleury credit, though, for playing goalie with a big sword sticking out of his back.
I mean, more credit to him. I don't think I'd be able to move my arms or do any of that goalie stuff with a giant Excalibur in my back, but he's sticking around this season and everything. I hope that doesn't come and poison the locker room or anything, but Vegas just from the beginning has always rubbed me the wrong way ever since their first season. I tried to embrace the underdog role, but the second it got to golden misfits, it just it made me just recoil a bit. And seeing the Caps give them a bit of a push in the Stanley Cup final was very good for me to see, and to see them have that series against the Sharks where they blew that lead in the series and in the game. I'll admit I enjoyed watching that a little bit, and watching the Stars push them around. As much as I don't love the Stars right now, it was okay to watch. I thought that was pretty cool. But
as Wags knows, there's a reason I call Vegas the Toronto of the West.
That is a great way. They are. They're the Toronto of the West. And the part that bothers me about Vegas is that they just seem like they act like they're owed a Stanley Cup. That's the part that's always just rubbed me the wrong way. Like, yeah, okay, you guys have a great team. You got the favor of the expansion draft. Good for you. But you still got to go out and win it. It just seems like they walked into that final against Washington like it was already a foregone conclusion. They're going to win. And then they walked into the next season like, we're just going to win.
Well, I mean, like San Jose and Tampa, I mean, they got handed Ford Pintos, for their expansion teams. And then, Minnesota got, a Yugo. And yet here comes Vegas with a Lamborghini, of a team to start off. I mean, and also that's not the way it's supposed to work.
Right. And, I don't have a problem with giving expansion teams good teams just to grow the game there. But the Blue Jackets have won one playoff series in their history. Vegas how many has Vegas already won? Like 5 in 3
I think it's
seasons?
5. I think it's about 5. Yeah.
Like you got to admit, it's a little unfair. And
Well, you're talking to fans of two teams that have had, the Blues did go to the finals in their first 3 years. But that was different. All the expansion teams were in one division. Right. It just so happened the Blues were the best of the dregs, if you will. And then, of course, we've gone, win 50 plus years without even going to the Stanley Cup final after those first 3 years. So it's just, we feel your pain when it comes to Vegas and their sense of entitlement.
Right. It's just, you guys walked into the league and now you're basically being handed a decent shot at a Stanley Cup every single season. And I grew up with the Capitals. They've been to the Stanley Cup final once before they won in 2018. The Blues had not been the Stanley Cup final for just as long as the Leafs had, basically, when they came into the league. So like some of us have had to endure a little bit of pain before success. Vegas just walks right in. It's just, oh, we're going to the playoffs this year. We won the division. Whatever. They get on my nerves. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and Luke Widbin, the guy that composes our intro music, chiming in. Did the Avalanche guys shame Vegas for having a good team in year one? That's literally what he just did for the last 3 minutes here. So
I'm not shaming them for having a good team. Good for them. But also let's acknowledge a little bit that some of us had to suffer first before success. Good on them for having a good team. Not a fan of their attitudes.
And Wags, we know what suffering in hockey is, being Blues fans. We know that all too well.
Yeah, just go back to our November shows and you'll see exactly what that was a long and painful month. I'll leave it at that.
It was. That made us drinkers.
Yeah,
put it that way.
That's our excuse, at least.
Yeah, as I drink my Irish cider here.
Well, Griffin, we want to thank you for being on the show. It's been a lot of fun. I mean, yes, we have a little bit of a budding rivalry with Colorado, but it's always great to meet the people behind that rivalry. And like you said, that we got a lot of great people here on THPN. We're going to just allow you, like we do every guest that comes on our show. Feel free to plug away. Where can we find you and your stuff?
Well, you guys can find my articles and everything at fansided.com. Even if I haven't written for a little while, you can scroll for a little bit, find my name, click on my name, and you can scroll through a lot of my articles there. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can follow me at GYoungsNHL. If you want to follow my podcast, where you listen to me rant about the Avs and probably listen to me complain about the Blues a bit during this upcoming season, you can follow them at It Avs It Is. We have new episodes every Monday and Thursday. There'll be a new episode dropping tomorrow. I think you guys will be in that a little bit, but that's about it. You can find me at Fansided. You can find me at my show, It Avs It Is, and find me at my Twitter at GYoungsNHL.
Oh, and one final thing. Predictions for the first 2 games between Colorado and St. Louis. What's your score predictions?
That's a good question. I honestly haven't given score a bit of a thought much yet, but for the opening game, I think the Avs will take that one at least. I think it'll be close. I'd give that one a 4-2 Avs win, maybe with an empty netter. And for that second game, I think I can bet on that one going to overtime. And at that point, basically a coin flip. Avs fan in me wants to say that the Avs are going to win that one, but I also have trouble seeing the Blues going 0-2 to start the season. I think the Blues take a close one in game 2 just to give the Avs a little bit of adversity to start the season, which there's nothing wrong with.
I think to set the tone of the season, I think the Blues and Avs split this series. I have the Avs winning night 1 just because the Blues have had more turnover. They need a little bit of time to gel. I would say Avs 3-1, maybe 3-2 OT, night 1. And then night 2, I would say Blues win another close one. I would probably flip that around, say 3-2 Blues.
Yeah,
what do you think, guys?
Yeah, I think actually both games will probably end up going overtime. And I think you guys are right on the head. I think it's a split Colorado game 1, Blues game 2. Colorado's going to be hyped. It's in Colorado, so they don't have to worry about travel and figuring out how to make all of that work. And yeah, the Blues have had turnover, but it's not as much as you think. And the fact that O'Reilly's the captain of this team and he's already done so much for St. Louis in his 2 short years here. I still think Colorado gets the win in game 1. I'm going to go 4-3 in overtime. And then I'm going to go 2-1 Blues in overtime in game 2.
2 overtime games. I mean,
yeah.
Not like we're staying up late enough already.
I know, right? Exactly. What's another half hour
Right.
once we're up past midnight, right?
Hopefully, it doesn't go to a shootout, and of course, for another hour after that.
Yeah, and then no one scores, and it goes 15 rounds, like that one Rangers game, a decade ago.
Oh, just so you know, real quick, Tom, Jake Neighbors has taken a penalty in the Blues scrimmage.
Nice, very nice. He is already assimilating himself just perfectly fine. He's our first round pick from this year, the 26th overall. And a couple days ago, he took a puck to the mouth and got stitched up, and he was right back out there like a true professional.
That's just the initiation, it seems.
Yeah, exactly. All righty. Well, thank you so much for being on, Griffin. It was great. And of course, as Guy notes here, our Hawaii Blues fan, you were on the Blue Note Fan Report this past week. So check that out on YouTube to search for the Blue Note Fan Report. And speaking of Guy, he joins us once again for another Aloha Commentary. And Guy, of course, playing the role of Adam Oates, feeding us a nice pass to us Brett Hulls here, I guess, if you will, with Griffin Youngs. We will hear from Guy and his Aloha Commentary after we tell you about another one of our great Hockey Podcast Network podcasts. Hey, by the way, Griffin, Mr. Capitals fan, our podcast this week is our Capitals podcast, The Caps Chirp.
So you like hockey? Congratulations. You're amongst the smartest sports fans in the world. Want to fight about it? Join me, the Hockey Troll, and that snack Polly Cupcakes every Monday and Thursday on the official Caps Chirp podcast, repping the greatest team in the NHL, your Washington Capitals.
Not only do we bring you the best Washington Capitals coverage, but we've got the hottest takes and the tastiest content.
Tune in wherever you get your podcasts and at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com. Chirp us on all social media platforms at Caps Chirp.
See you beauties and benders there.
And now, from Honolulu, Hawaii, via St. Louis, starting in the Pacific Ocean, Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan.
As Tiffany likes to say, can you feel my heartbeat? Can you feel my heartbeat? Can you feel my heartbeat? Yeah. And in the immortal words of that great singer-songwriter, Rick Springfield, a wish and a prayer won't get me there tonight. St. Louis Blues, take me away with you. Blues, I'm wasting away. I want to see you play. Aloha! I'm Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, host of the Blue Note Fan Report, owner and operator of StLouisFanReport.com, and this is my Aloha Commentary for the Blue Notes podcast. Well, guys, I'm on my balcony because it's raining. You know what? As Mike Tyson used to say, everybody's got a plan till they get hit in the face. Well, I got hit in the face and had to come up with a new one, so here it is. I just released a wonderful video today. I got your guest today, Griffin Youngs from the It Avs It Is podcast, to do a preview with me. Man, it is outstanding. The stuff that he goes over, the stuff that I go over, we spar a little bit, baby. We spar. And somebody gets punched in the face. See who it is on the Blue Note Fan Report on YouTube. Now, guys, hockey is just a few days away. Can you tell how excited I am? Training camp has been going great. The Blues have had perfect attendance through training camp. Now, this is huge news, and you want to know why? Because the Dallas Stars had to shut down their training camp. The Columbus Blue Jackets had players miss training camp. Pittsburgh had players miss training camp. And I just read that one other team today, and my mind just went blank on me, also had players not come in due to training camp issues or COVID issues or whatever you want to say. They're saying they're unfit to play. You know what? I just wrote an article about Dallas having it, and one of the things I said in that article is this couldn't have happened at a better time. This is perfect for the NHL. They get to see what protocols work, what protocols need tweaking, and what ones just plain failed and they need to be rewritten. It is the NHL is doing things right. They're not operating on a fly, and it really seems to me like we know COVID's here, and it's the X factor. Let's just deal with it. I gotta love that. Mike Hoffman's out there playing. Jake Neighbors took a puck to the face and got back up. Krug is playing really good. Our biggest question is goal. I'm working on an article about our goaltending. Hope to have that out in the next couple of days before training camp start, or before the games start. And also on Tuesday at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, myself, a buddy of mine from the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I'm hoping a buddy of mine from the Vegas Knights are going to get together and do a live preview show. Might not happen, might happen, but that's the plan. See if we get hit in the face. Now, you guys asked me to do one more thing. You said you wanted me to pick the Central Division. Well, to be honest with you, other than Detroit being in last place, I think this division's way up for grabs. And I could sit there and think all day. I could spend hours trying to come up with it. And you know what the best plan is? I got the Hurricanes, the Lightning, the Predators, the Blackhawks, the Stars, Blue Jackets, and the Panthers. Oh man, it's getting a little hot in here. Sorry, guys. There we go. Much better, right, Tom? I feel better. And so who's going to, woohoo, see, they're already jumping out. So we're going to see who's going to come in 7th place. In 7th place, it will be the Panthers. In 6th place, the Predators. In 5th place, the Blackhawks. In 4th place, the Stars. In 3rd place, the Lightning. And I'll do this one more real time. The last two, I'll click it. I'll pick first place first, and then I'll say who second is. So that's first. Put that on the side. So 2nd place is the Hurricanes, and that means my buddy's going to be really happy because in first, I'm taking the Blue Jackets. You know what? Picking it out of the hat, that's not a bad list. That's how tight this division is. That's how unpredictable this division is, especially with the Stars having COVID, Dallas losing, or not Dallas, Tampa Bay losing their top scorer in Kucherov, the Blue Jackets having some contractual issues with a couple of their players. There's just so much in that division, it could go anywhere. The only reason that I think Detroit is in last is because Detroit wants to be in last. I think they want one more chance at a couple high picks. I think they're going to make some trades to get even higher picks and go from there. That's not a bad strategy at this point. That's really not. No fans in the stands. You don't have to worry about low attendance. You put guys on the ice. You put your young guys on the ice. You let them learn, let them get experience. That could be a good team in a couple of years. You know what? Now it's on you guys. So you tell me what you think. A little crazy, a little wild, but hockey's back, baby. So this is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, saying much, much mahalo, extreme aloha, and I cannot wait to see you again. Wait a minute. You must. If you want to see me again, you got to do something. You have to like the Bluenotes podcast on YouTube. You have to like the Blue Note Fan Report on YouTube. And you've got to subscribe to both of them. That's right. Like us and subscribe. Please check out the STL, or St. Louis Fan Report, at stlfanreport.com. That is all about you. That's where my articles, that's where my videos are. And I've got a pick'em contest running. in my pick'em contest, you have to be a member of the Hawaii STL Blues Fan Clan. The pick'em contest is on the website, but the password is in the clan. All the rules are there. Go check it out. You got a couple days. My prize this month is a signed mini Jordan Bennington helmet. Let's see if we can get that away to the winner. So again, let me try this one more time. This is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, saying much mahalo, much aloha, and I cannot wait to see you again on the Blue Notes podcast, Blue Note Fan Report, and on the STL Fan Report. Aloha!
Oh, and you know what? Guess professional broadcasters. You know, I was just talking about how Guy was a ray of sunshine on a rainy day and hyping him up. And I was hearing it on my end, but then I look and I see, oh, guess who's still on mute? So, yeah. Professional broadcasters, Wags.
It's what we do. It's what we do.
It's what we do. So, yes, thank you, Guy, for being our sunshine on a rainy day. And, of course, check out the Hawaii Blues Fan Clan if you want to win that beautiful Bennington autographed helmet that he showed off there. Look it up on Facebook. It's there. And, of course, Guy asked me to give a shout out to 22 Until None Veterans Group. Their mission is to end veteran suicide, and we support their efforts. Guy's a big part of that group in Hawaii. They've helped him out. They've helped countless other veterans out as well. 22untilnone.org if you want to learn more about their mission. Definitely want to give those guys a big shout out here. So as Guy mentioned, we are going to pick our Central Division order here on Blue Notes this week. We did the Western Division last week. And as you can see, Guy making his picks. He drew him out of a hat. Columbus, Carolina, Tampa, Dallas, Chicago, Nashville, Florida, and Detroit. Luke Widbin, before the show, gave us his predictions. He did not draw them out of a hat. But oddly enough, interestingly, not too far different on the order. Despite that, he went Tampa, Carolina, Dallas, Columbus Blue Jackets, Florida, Nashville, Chicago, a plastic bag tied to a tree, and then the Detroit Red Wings. Now, he gave me an explanation for that plastic bag, if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube. A plastic bag that's been stuck in a tree for over 9 months, but you can't reach it. You just have to look at it every morning and pray that last night's windstorm finally shook it free, but then you wake up and shit, it's still there. And
that
then
hilarious.
But he still picks that bag to finish higher than the Red Wings. And you know what? He's I don't think he's that far off, Wags. I really don't.
No, I mean that plastic bag has more potential and more gumption, as Darren Pang would like to say, than the Red Wings right now.
Definitely, and you're hoping that plastic bag doesn't wholly jumping off the tree sometime soon. You know, just as Panger would say. So, before we begin, let's just go ahead and get it in there. Fair to say you got Detroit last in your rankings.
I do, and it's not because they are. No, it is because they're that bad.
They are.
I was gonna trying to say something nice and positive, but I think the nicest and most positive thing you can say about Detroit is the fact that Stevie Y knows exactly what he's doing. It's not that they're going to be good in the next couple of years, but it's more so of the fact that Yzerman knows what he's doing. He built Tampa Bay into what it is now, and he's kind of going through the same model with Detroit. So as a Red Wings fan, and somehow there are still some of those.
I know, right?
wait for the process. The process has been deemed to work, and they've got some youth there. They got some talent there. It's not going to be this year. It's not going to be next year, but watch out because Detroit will be back. Stevie Y knows what he's doing.
Yeah, definitely. And, they're going to go through some dark times. They need to build up, their base again. I mean, this was a team that for so long was in win now mode that they really let their farm system kind of go to pot, if you will. So it's going to be a while yet for Detroit. But then, of course, this is the kind of a rebuild, Wags, where the team on the other side of it, you really kind of worry about because they will have built so much time. And, of course, with Stevie Y, who knows a thing or two about building winners, like Tampa Bay, for instance, their day will come. But in the meantime, we can make fun of them now, Wags, because they inflicted so much pain and misery on us in the 90s and early 2000s. It's our turn, damn it.
It is, and it'd be much better if we were playing against them the next 2 years and then they move back to the East, because I would be fine with beating up on them the next 2 years to get our revenge and then let them go back to the East when they're, starting to become good again. So unfortunately, that's not going to be the case, but maybe we'll get a chance to beat up on them next year.
Definitely. So we've got one end of the bookend here. Let's go ahead and fill the other end. Let's go ahead and start off with who wins the Central Division. Wags, who do you got?
It's one of those things that you're probably going to be like, oh, really? I'm going to stick with Tampa Bay. I mean, I think they're the best team in the league potentially still. Yes, that's saying Colorado and Vegas as well. I still think Tampa Bay is the best team, even without Nikita Kucherov. I don't think they win the Stanley Cup this year, but I think they have enough to take this kind of up in the air Central Division.
I'm very tempted to go Tampa just because they're obviously such a good team. They're built for world domination, kind of like Colorado is. But before they won the Stanley Cup and the playoffs before then, they ran across a certain team that broke their heart in the first round. A team that no one ever gives any credit to, ever. Like they are a team anonymous in East, and yet they're always good. I don't see any reason why they won't be good again this year, and I'm going to take Columbus as a surprise winner of the Central Division. No one ever counts on Columbus, but this is a good team. They have good goaltending. They have a good roster up and down of players that you may not know about. Like they just re-signed Bjorkstrand to a big contract, about $5.5 million per. He's one of the best two-way forwards in the league. You don't even know who Bjorkstrand is, probably, but yet that's their team. They're that good. I think they have what it takes to win.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you whatsoever. That's why I've got them second in the division for me. I think Columbus is a very, very scary team, and they once again just under the radar. They just win, and they've got two young goalies in Korpisalo and Merzlikins. If they can stay healthy and they can figure out the Dubois situation and at least keep them happy for this year, they've got a real good chance to make some noise. And watch out for Columbus, because like you said, they're the team that beat Tampa 2 years ago when no one gave them a chance. And Tampa just needed some revenge last year. I really think I picked Columbus to beat them in 2 straight years. Didn't work out that way, but after that first game, holy crap, does Columbus scare me a little bit.
Yeah, they definitely. I got Tampa finishing second, and it's not just because I think Columbus is good. I think they're definitely good enough to take the division. One thing to remember with Tampa, they won't have Kucherov this year at all. He is out for the year. They won't have Shattenkirk. He left as a free agent. They may still have to do some cap gymnastics. I think, although I think with Kucherov, I think they're okay now. But they're still a very strong team, probably on paper, the strongest in, between the Central, East and, Canadian teams. But they're not, I don't get the same kind of unstoppable force feeling like I did last year from them. I think they come into the season a little bit weaker, especially without Kucherov. That's going to be a big factor, and I think it's a factor that a lot of people are overlooking with Tampa.
I agree with you. The one thing that I will continue to beat down is, who do they have in net?
But they still got Vasilevsky.
That for me, if they didn't have a goaltender, I would be right there along with you, putting him in that spot. But I just think Vasilevsky is just such a freak of nature that, I mean, he's Dominic Hasek of this generation. He's going to will his team to win. I think Steven Stamkos he's not going to play the full season, I don't believe, but I think he'll be in it just enough to kind of inspire that team back to the top spot. But I think it'll be a battle the entire season between Columbus and Tampa. And my third place team is going to be right there with them as well. I'm going with Carolina. I think they are another one of those young teams that has a lot to prove. I took Aho and Svechnikov as my top 2 picks this year in the fantasy draft. I've got a lot of potential in Carolina. They're a bunch of jerks, and I'm right there with them.
I'm with you on Carolina. I think they're another team that's going to be very strong this year. Svechnikov is going to have another year of experience in him. I think he is going to be a great forward. You think he's going to be a great forward because you took him for the THPN fantasy hockey team. So, and his line mate Sebastian Aho, I noticed that as well. So,
Bros before a hose.
That's right. And Carolina, I mean, we talked about how Colorado's got a good defensive core. Carolina is also very deep as well. So that's why I got them in third as well. Now, if this were like a week ago, I might have said Dallas in third. But things have changed in a hurry in Dallas. For one, first of all, there's the COVID cases. They're not going to be able to start the season on time. And if they're going to be in a situation where they are chasing down their schedule, trying to find where to fit games where they can, this team could wear out very quickly, especially when you consider that they don't just have their starting goaltender out, they have their backup goaltender out. Bishop is still hurt, and Khudobin is having immigration issues. We don't know when he's actually going to make it stateside. Apparently they saw that picture of Khudobin shirtless with the crawfish and the beer, and he is now on a no-fly list. Maybe actually that's not the case. I don't know. But as Corey Crenshaw said, she was very terrified of Anton Khudobin. So you just wonder with a guy like that. So I got Dallas in 4. I still think they make the playoffs. I don't think the rest of the Central's that strong. I think they'll still make it, but they might have to dig themselves out of a hole, kind of like they did last year.
Yeah, I could see that. Unfortunately, I do not have them as my fourth.
Ooh.
This is a team that, well, just like Columbus, I think is very, very underrated. They're a younger team. They've got a goalie who is a little bit of a head case, but has something that he needs to prove. And guess what? He used to be in Columbus as well. I got Florida as my fourth place team. I really like what they do down there. They've got Joel Quenneville in year 2. I really think Florida takes that jump this year and gets into the playoffs and makes some noise. They're the Columbus of 2 years ago in my mind.
No Mike Hoffman, though.
Yeah, but they've got enough. They've got enough offense. Their defense is good, still led by Ekblad. And like I said, I think Bobrovsky has a big bounce back year. Yes, people are going to say, oh, well, he got his money. He's not really going to try as hard. I think he's got a little bit more pride than that. I think Bobrovsky bounces back. Oh, and guess what? I'm pretty sure both of the goaltenders in the World Junior Championship gold medal game are Florida Panthers goaltender draft picks. So they've got 3 goaltending prospects that will be able to supplant Bobrovsky in the next couple of years if he doesn't pan out. So I really like Florida. I'm going to stick with them at 4th.
And you got Dallas 5th?
I do have Dallas 5th. They do still have a lot of firepower, but they're getting older. They don't have their goaltenders right now. And I just feel like the game speed is starting to pass them by a little bit. Yes, they've got some young players. Rupe Hintz is a guy I drafted with my last pick as well. I think he's going to have a pretty decent year. They have some guys that showed up in the playoffs last year, but those guys are still young. I don't know if they're going to last the entire season. And I think their older guys are going to start falling apart a little bit this year. So I think they're going to be pushing Florida for that last spot, but I think they fall just short.
And, I think Florida has some young talent as well. Aaron Ekblad's a very good defender. Barkov's a great center. I'm not as high on them as you are, and I don't even have them finishing 5th. I'm going to give that. You mentioned World Juniors goaltenders. I'm going with Nashville as the 5th place team. As much as it pains me to say that, because I really don't like Nashville at all, but they unloaded tourists. They got a head case out of their lineup this year. They still have a very strong defensive core, one of the best in hockey. Roman Josi, top 2, top 3 defenseman in all of hockey easily. Some could say he's even the best. I still say it's Hedman, but it's close. They still have Philippe Forsberg. I think they've got enough in them to finish 5th. They might make some noise with Dallas late in the season, but I do think that, just kind of like how there's a gap in the West between the Blues, Avs, and Vegas with the rest, I think there's a bit of a gap from 4th to 5th. And that, like I said, Nashville could make it interesting, but I do think they are the best of the rest.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we think this division is such a toss-up, because there could be a lot of teams that make some noise that, they may not be a playoff contender, but they're going to be a contender in the Central. And, I like Nashville at 6. I know saying like and in 6 doesn't really mesh very well, but they do have some good talent. The question mark comes down to goaltending. Are they going to go with Rene? Are they going to go with Saros? Are they going to just say, screw it and find some way to get Askarov over here? That's going to be their biggest question mark for me, is are they going to be able to keep enough pucks out of the net to push them up in the standings? Probably, but I'm not going to bank on it.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. And I think Florida, will finish 6th behind the Predators. I just think I don't like Bobrovsky. I'm worried about him going forward. I think they overpaid for him. He always, even before he signed that big contract, he was, dating back to his time in Philly, he was always kind of up and down. He was been kind of a head case. So, and then, of course, as I mentioned, they don't have Hoffman either. Yeah. So, and that's some scoring firepower they're going to be without. So, I've got Florida in 6th. So I guess this means that we both have the Chicago Black Hags in 7th.
Yeah, I mean, losing Jonathan Toews for whatever amount of time that is, not having, really any goaltending after, obviously losing Corey Crawford. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Robin Lehner being traded away. Their defense is crumbling. Yes, they've got some good young talent and guys like Alexander DeBrincat, but it's just not going to be enough. That it's finally caught up to them, the whole salary cap issue. And yeah, they're not going to be there this year. I still think, they're going to have some really good games. You're going to see a lot of that old Central Division Hawks, Red Wings kind of going back and forth between 2 bad teams instead of 2 good teams. But I still think they're going to be competitive, but they're just not. They're not going to be there. And, if they were smart, they would really treat this Toews injury with kid gloves and, maybe give him the whole year if he really needs it. Maybe spell Kane a little bit as well. Really come back fresh next year. Let the youngsters get some experience, and maybe next year come back in the redefined Central Division and make some noise.
Yeah, Chicago doesn't have anything to play for this year, really. No. I mean, they're going to be without Kirby Dach for a while as well, who they were counting on being their second line center this year. So that's one issue they got to deal with. Their defense to not get any stronger this offseason. I'm sorry, Zadorov is not that great. Our former friends at Offside by a Mile confirmed that with us. He's kind of a pylon. And they traded Mata to the Kings, so that's an issue. They lost Crawford, which, again, he was kind of in and out of the lineup in recent years, but still their number one goalie is Malcolm Subban. I mean, is that giving you a lot of confidence in Chicago? I personally don't see how it would. So this is going to be another rebuilding year for Chicago, and if they're smart, like you said, they tell Toews to, sit this one out. We got this.
Yeah, 100%.
Kind of sort of. And of course, in last place, Detroit, who should be competing for a number 1 overall pick, I think, this year. And knowing Detroit and their recent luck, they'll probably still end up picking 4th.
Yeah, because Toronto has to pick first, right?
Of course, it's just a given. It's just a given. Them or the Rangers. I think the Rangers might be due for another first rounder. I mean, they are first overall. I mean, they had it last year, and they had number 2 the year before. So, it's the Oilers' plan. It sucks so hard for so long. You get all these first rounders, and
look how well that worked.
I was gonna say maybe one of them pans out. Maybe one. I mean, then again, it's kind of hard to mess up when you have Connor McDavid on your team. Just saying.
Yeah, it's true, but they still haven't won anything. So
that's a fair point. So that is our picks for the Central. We'll post that banner up on Twitter tomorrow during the day, where you all can discuss that. A lot of varied responses. And of course, Guy picking out of a hat, he still ended up with our top 4, just in a different orders. So he may be onto something with picking out of a hat there, honestly.
Yeah,
And
I wouldn't. I can't say I did that, but I was getting close to that.
Alrighty, well, to close out our show today, it is time for our Notes That Are Blues segments. We call it Notes That Are Blue because Bluenotes is already taken, so these are notes that are colored in blue for our purposes. Just look around the league here, and with the St. Louis Blues, by the way, the scrimmage, the blue-white scrimmage is going on as we speak on YouTube, and the good thing about being on YouTube, Wags, is that we can watch later and catch up, which is what I'm planning on doing when we are done here. Right now, they are in the second, and looks like it was a glove save. I'm not sure who's playing net for the...
Bennington's in for the white squad, I believe, and then Husso is in for the blue squad.
And that was Mitch Reinke with the wrist shot there. Remember Mitch Reinke?
Yeah, I remember him. I don't think most people will.
Yeah, exactly. I remember when he had a lot of hype, and I think he had some injury issues last year, so that's why his star's kind of fallen a little bit. All right, Notes That Are Blue, damn it. Let's get back on track. Corey Crawford, as we just mentioned with Chicago, decided that a career without the Blackhawks isn't worth having at all. He retires after signing with the New Jersey Devils. He's had a fair share of concussion and injury issues in recent seasons. That probably was a factor in his retirement, and he didn't say it himself, but there had been some talk that he had maybe some anxiety and depression issues after leaving Chicago, the team that he's been with all his career and really kind of nurtured him a little bit. So I guess the thought of playing in a uniform other than Chicago's was too much to bear.
Well, I mean, it's also New Jersey, so
yeah, not like he's going to win a cup there.
No. I was just talking about it being New Jersey, not even the Devils.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
But we've seen this over the last couple of years, especially with a guy like Robin Lehner, and that may have been a factor in it as well, having been his teammate and being able to talk with him and open up to him about what maybe he's feeling, going to a different team, having to deal with depression and injury. When you're rehabbing from injuries, especially the last year and a half with the way COVID has affected things, you're essentially going through it alone. You're not going through it with teammates or anything like that. So going from a team that you've been part of as a family to a new environment, still having to deal with rehab, doing it by yourself in the COVID era, possibly leaving your family as well. That's a lot to handle and to take in. And for someone that's had to deal with that for the last couple of years, I don't necessarily blame him. And people are going to give Crawford a bunch of crap for saying, oh, well, he signed and it's so late. It's almost the start of the season. Well, you know what? Sometimes you have to go through it and actually see what it's like before you can actually make that decision. So yeah, it hurts the Devils at this point in time because now they're scrambling for a starting goaltender. They've got one at this point right now, but they were going into it thinking Crawford was going to be a part of it. But you got to give the guy credit for at least giving it a go and seeing if it was something that he was going to be able to do. And Crawford, phenomenal goaltender. I actually had thought the Blues should have taken a flyer on him instead of the Devils because we weren't sure what we were going to get out of Ville Husso. Wasn't the case, and maybe the Blues would have been in the same situation anyway. But being closer to the Central Division might have helped as well. I don't know, but it is a great career for Corey Crawford, and honestly, I wish him nothing but the best.
Well, sometimes it's not even that. I mean, I think in the case of Crawford, he really got comfortable in Chicago. I mean, I know Lehner, I think he struggled a little bit in Vegas after being traded from Chicago because he liked Chicago and he was thinking of settling there. Obviously, he's gotten over it, since then. But it's something that you don't hear a lot about when players get traded. Like of course Crawford was a free agent; he had a choice, and he chose New Jersey. But when you get traded, I mean, I experienced something like that one time in my radio career. When I was working in Fort Wayne, Indiana in 2016, I had just bought a condo in Fort Wayne. It was the first place I've ever owned. And I bought it because I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be my home for a while. This is going to be my home for a few years. I moved around a lot in my radio career. And out of the blue, I get called into the GM's office and he tells me, we have to make some financial moves and we need to send you to South Bend. And if you don't go to South Bend, we're going to have to let you go. And that messed me up for a while. Because, I mean, South Bend's only about an hour and a half away, but I had to sell my condo. I had to move into a new place. and it was moving away from a place I thought was going to be my home for a while, and it happens in hockey all the time when players get traded. I mean, especially if you're a guy like, I remember a few years ago, Ryan Smith got traded from Edmonton to he went to LA, right? Yeah. And he was sobbing in his press conference, and he was sobbing because that was his home. That was, that's where he put down roots, and it hurts when you've been there so long. Now, Griffin, he's watching the podcast after being a guest. He says Crawford has his cups. He has nothing to prove in Jersey. That is also a factor as well. So, I wouldn't be surprised if that ran through his head. And it's like, why am I still doing this? I have my cups. I've been paid very well. Why bother? So that
dealing with concussions, do you really want to go through that again potentially? And you have to think of family too.
Exactly. Mathew Barzal, speaking of being set for life, he signs a 3-year extension with the Islanders worth $7 million per season. As we talked about in our fantasy draft, I was kind of surprised he took a 3-year deal in the COVID era instead of maybe a 1 or 2 year deal max, given the economy and pandemic and all. But I guess Wags, he just wanted security, and he's a guy that must like playing in New York.
He must. And, when they let John Tavares go, Barzal was kind of put up there as the guy that was replacing him and had the ability to become better than John Tavares. And we haven't necessarily seen that yet. So to go for a 3-year deal, it almost feels like he doesn't believe that as well. And goes back to security. You want to make sure that you've got it. Now, the cap is flat for the next 3 years, correct?
I don't think is it the next 3? I thought it was
the next 2 or 3
season or 2. Yeah. Okay.
So if it's it's flat for the next 3 years, it almost makes sense because he's not going to necessarily get a raise over the next 3 years because there's not going to be any extra revenue. So at the very least, he knows he's set for 3 years. And then when the cap does fluctuate again, he's right there ready to go, and he can have 3 seasons under the belt and say, look, this is what I've done for you. I did this to help the team. Now reward me. So it is still kind of a, put up or shut up contract, but for him, I think it's more of, hey, I got security. I know my money's coming for the next 3 years. I'll take it.
Yeah, and not only that, but I think Shane Ryan of Sensauer pointed out last night that the way his contract breaks down on his 3rd year, he's still getting $10.5 million. Yep. So we don't need to send him a fruit basket.
No.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. And as we talked a little bit about just throughout the episode here, Dallas will not start the season with the rest of us. 6 players, 2 staff members have tested positive for COVID. Stars will not likely play any earlier than January 19th after the bubble created. Of course, the bubble during the playoffs, everything was ideal. We had no positive cases whatsoever. Everyone behaved, and we got through it just fine. And I feel like people have kind of taken that for granted a little bit coming into this season, because now you have teams traveling again, playing in their own cities. I have a feeling the Stars will not be the only team in this situation at some point this year.
I 100% agree. You've got travel that you're dealing with. You've got guys that are, they're smart, but it doesn't take but a slip up from one guy to have it happen. And not even a slip up in the worst sense of, a guy went to the bar because he wanted to. It could be, hey, this guy went grocery shopping for his family and he got it there. I mean, it's going to take something small, and that's what's going to happen. I think you're going to see a couple of different teams go through. I mean, and in the NFL, you had teams, go through it. The Cleveland Browns are going through it right now, and yet they're still playing a playoff game today. So it's going to happen, I think. But the NHL has done enough, I think, in the goodwill department for fans to be like, it's going to happen. It's okay. They're going to find ways to make sure it's, limited to a small amount of time that these teams miss, and having these taxi squads apply help as well.
Yeah.
So that, they're going to find ways to make it so that these teams aren't scrambling to get these games played before the end of the season.
Well, and we saw it with the Cardinals in baseball last year. And we're seeing it now with the Billikens in college basketball. Mizzou as well. I have a feeling this is just one of those things where, at least until we're all vaccinated and this pandemic becomes, a footnote in history, this might be something that, these professional leagues just have to accept is just the way things are. And you're just going to have to be prepared for it and figure out what to do. I mean, now granted, of course, there's also the thought that, hey, if we all get COVID, then we got herd immunity and, it's not going to matter. But you can't rely on that. That's silly talk. But at some point, this pandemic will end. At some point, things will get back to normal. They're hopefully the 2021-22 season is going to be a normal 82 season schedule. It'll be nice to start seeing some normalcy back in our sports. But as we are reminded in the case of the Dallas Stars, it's a process. It's a process. It's a process.
Trust the process.
Trust the process. And, and we also have to trust, Father Time himself. And he finally has given us hockey after all this time. Let there be hockey on Wednesday night. And Wags, how much hockey do you plan on watching this opening weekend?
Oh, man, I'm going to take in as much as I possibly can. If there's a game on TV and I'm home, I'm going to have it on the TV. I mean, hell, I'm watching a scrimmage on YouTube right now. That's how much hockey has been missed in my household. And yes, we may not have it because Hulu and Fox Sports Midwest can't come to an agreement, but we're going to find a way to watch it. Somehow, some way, we're going to have Blues hockey on our television come Wednesday night.
And I will say the World Juniors was a nice little appetizer heading into the season. I mean, I'll admit, I've never really watched the World Juniors in the past. I mean, maybe just a little bit, like the US-Canada, gold medal game. But that's about it. But I watched more World Juniors than I have any other year. And it was kind of interesting to watch just, not just the future of hockey, but just like the different styles of hockey. When they talk about playing a European style of hockey or the Russian style of hockey, you get to see that on display. And it was kind of nice to see that kind of melding of cultures and things like that. It was some good hockey.
Oh, it was some great hockey. And you can sit there and say Canada's 16-2 win over Germany was unfair. Well, look what the Germans did after that. They took it and they said, hey, we're going to learn from it. They did. They were missing players, and yet they were still giving their all into the very last second of that game. And then they end up making, the playoffs of the junior championship. So it just goes to show you that there are a lot, and I mean a lot of great hockey players out there. And to be able to see the youngsters play and guys that you may not know of just yet, it gives you a really good indication of how good the game of hockey and the good hands that it's in for the next, 5, 6, 8 years.
Yeah, and it reminds me that I'm actually kind of tempted to go to our fantasy hockey league and claim Tim Stützle off of waivers. Even though we just drafted yesterday, Stützle, you mentioned Team Germany, he carried that team on his back, and he is going to be a great player for Ottawa. He might be. He's got a good shot at least being as good as Draisaitl and claiming the best German ever title.
Even though he missed Draisaitl as our German team guy last week.
Look, the past is the past. We misfired a pass. I mean, we've got, it's like football. You just got to move on. Forget that last interception and just move on. Alrighty, Wags. On that note, I think that is going to do it. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm just once again excited for Wednesday. Watching this scrimmage is getting me pumped that the Blues are going to be able to make some moves this year and be competitive. Very excited to see what happens come Wednesday night against Colorado.
Yeah, same here. And just let there be hockey. Let there be a good season this year without a lot of COVID interruptions. That's all we can pray for. And I'm just ready. I'm stoked. And let's get it on. And that's going to do it for this episode of Bluenotes. I want to thank you for watching and listening, because without you, there is no me, there is no Wags, there is no Griffin Youngs, there is no Guy the Wyatt Blues fan, and finally, there is no Hockey Podcast Network. I'm Tom Franklin, reminding you to not be a chump and always play to the whistle.
A reminder that you can follow Bluenotes on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Bluenotes Pod. I'm the voice of the Blues, Tom Calhoun. Jeremy Boyer, play us out.
You're listening to the Hockey Podcast Network, your home for hockey talk covering every team in the NHL. New episodes every Monday. Download at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from.